Paul, which sectors do you think are going to be particularly hot in the coming months and years?
Yeah, lots of answers to that. Let's just say the UK answer, and it's just where the politics is. So ultimately, there'll be less spent, I would have thought, on transport. I mean, there's some notable schemes we're doing. I'm doing the M25 at the moment, the high-speed trains. But so much more is going into housing, education and health, and probably of those three, housing and sort of local regeneration, where not necessarily big-ticket schemes, some of the big-ticket things we've seen in PFI, but more smaller schemes, but lots of them. So it's almost sort of, you read your Guardian, work out where the political priorities are. That's where the money is getting spent, quite clearly.
Martin, would you agree?
I think if you look at wealthy nations generally, let's take European Union nations, what's happening is that populations are getting older, and birth rates are not generally rising. Certainly not materially. So there's a demographic shift towards older age, which means that the provision of infrastructure services needs to move more in that sort of direction. And I think you'll see a material increase in healthcare spend right the way across Europe. I looked at some statistics recently, and European healthcare, even in countries for example, like Switzerland, are still materially below per capita spend in the United States, for example. So we've got a long way to go to improve healthcare, and that the demand that individuals will have on healthcare will increase over time. I think equally the provision of aged care services to people will increase. So I think a lot of the infrastructure investment that you're going to see is going to be in the social infrastructure space over time, as people want a better quality of later years life. And a lot of the healthcare that you see around Europe, actually, the investment that's going is about extending people's lives for the period that they're around, extending the quality of their lives. And I think that's going to be a very interesting development over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
I think the carbon economy is going to be huge. Investment in carbon capture and storage plants, nuclear, assuming the UK commences a nuclear programme, transmission networks, things that require very large through-life investment to preserve them and to extend their life. Renewables, which we've touched on already, and then the social care and so on. I think the social care is likely, per our discussions earlier, to come more from governments, maybe alongside the private sector. I think if governments possibly can, they will incentivise the private sector to deliver as much of the carbon economy initiatives and major items of CapEx and through life operating as they possibly can. But I think that's got to be huge.
Olivier, do you think the carbon economy is an interesting area? Is that a good area to invest in?
Well, I don't know if it's a good area to invest in, but it's clearly one of the most frequently asked questions we have when we go into conferences or make seminars is talk about renewables, which is in terms of the projects tend to be small there, so it's not there are not a lot of project rating. Portfolio are rated, but not really project. But we get a lot of questions, and there is a definitive trend that this will need to increase. So now, I still think that the size of this market will still be small compared to what would be the social accommodation and social infrastructure, transport. I think what we should keep in mind as well is that most of people in the world don't live in OECD countries, but in emerging markets, and there the needs are water, power, transport. So really, the basic infrastructure that is already there in most of our countries, but it's still not there in this country. So there will be, these are tricky transactions or projects because the regulation is necessary there. The framework is not very established, but in volume in these countries, the needs will be huge in really the basic water primarily, which is not even well-being, but just being. But transportation, power. This is a massive market. So China, India, Russia, a number of countries.
One interesting area for us all is getting finance into some of these, because a number of the schemes that we've just described, let's say sort of local housing, care housing, or regeneration, or smaller water projects, they're quite small by themselves. They may be £5-10 million projects, which is perhaps below the threshold of the types of deals that, for instance, people around this table get involved in. But they absorb capital from the key players, and over time that capital needs to get released if they're going to invest elsewhere. So I think what we will probably see is a lot of these projects getting bundled together to create critical mass, so we can do a sort of major regeneration refinancing to take that capital out and then put it into the next wave of projects, whether or not that's in one country or moving off across Europe or even to developing countries. So there will be a finance challenge for us to bundle a number of those projects and recycle capital.
This is what happened with the wind farms. Mm-hmm. There is very few, transactions in the capital market that are individual wind farms. There are none, but there are quite a few now transactions that are pool of wind farms. So this is the way it is. And when it's a single country or a couple of countries, it's about wind, so regulation. So that lends itself quite well actually to this type of transaction. So this is the small projects. I agree. We'll see through portfolio transactions.